Hey adventurers, so today is going to be my wrap up for the month of April 2026. I read, 6 books and one short story in the month of April, and so I'm going to go through those. And one of them was, the short story was an ebook, and I did read one physical book as well, but the other 4 were audiobooks. Usually I can get through more than 4 audiobooks per month, but because I actually started learning some new stuff at my job, doing some training at my job, and I couldn't focus on the audiobook at the time, and so it was something where that had to be set aside for the sake of actually doing my job. And so my audiobook reading definitely went down in the month, which is a large part of the reason why I've only got 6 books on this, why I only read 6 books this month rather than the normal 8 to 10 is what I was getting previous months. So yeah, let's go through these real quick. The first one that I finished, that I technically started in, it was like the last day or the second to last day of March, but then it took me into April by the time that I finished it, and that was Honor, a sci-fi and fantasy anthology. So this is a anthology which is a collection of short stories by varying authors. A collection is a bunch of short stories by a single author, and an anthology is a bunch of short stories by different authors. And so this is an honor anthology. This anthology focuses around the theme of honor, and the 22 different authors that are in this book were just given the theme of honor, and they were allowed to explore that and play with that in whatever way felt right to them, seemed appropriate and correct to them. And so that's what happened with this one, or they all wrote these stories about honor. Fantastic stories, every one of them. I really greatly enjoyed this. I do already have my review though, so I'm not going to talk too much about it here. I will point you to that review. Then the ebook, or the short story that I read on my digitally, that's what I should say, is the Last Defender of Camelot by Roger Zelazny. This is one that I was reading with Liam from Liam's Lyceum, and if you've watched my adventure through Arthurian Lit Part 4 that I released last Thursday, you'll have seen me talk a little bit about this already, but I'm also going to be talking even more about this with Liam. By the time you're seeing this, I will have already talked with him. I don't know when that video is going up though, so I'm not really delving much into my thoughts in my Arthurian Lit video or in this wrap-up video, because most of my thoughts are going to come up and be discussed in that discussion with Liam. So I point you to that video whenever that one comes out, and if it's already out, I'll have it linked. If it's not, I will just make sure that you go find that at that once it does come out. That's what I'd point you to. But Last Defender of Camelot, I will briefly say it's a short story by Roger Zelazny following Lancelot in a more modern time period, and how that works and why that's the case is part of the story. And so I'm not going to give that away or explain that, but it's very much magical. It's very much Arthuriana. It's following, basically you follow a story about Sir Lancelot. So it's good. I enjoyed it. I did enjoy my time with it, although I kind of also expected a little bit more at the same time. Anyways, go watch the discussion with Liam for our thoughts on that. Then I listened to the next book in the which should be book 3 of the Belgariad by David Eddings, and this is Magician's Gambit. Once again, Eddings does his writing, the way that he's crafting these stories works absolutely perfectly for me. It's pretty much exactly the type of fantasy that I like to read, which is probably why Andrew D. Meredith works so well for me as an author, is because he was so heavily inspired and influenced by Eddings. Not that he's doing recreations or retelling those same stories that Eddings was telling or anything like that, just that the inspirations are very clear, especially having read all that Meredith has published so far and then going back and reading Eddings afterwards. I can very clearly see the inspirations. That being said, Magician's Gambit was fantastic. I love this book. I love the way we are starting to get a little bit of a pattern that has emerged within those first 3 books of the Belgariad, the pattern that he uses for each book. And so I kind of know what to expect from each book. That being said, it doesn't bother me at all. It's really enjoyable. The storytelling, the themes that he's playing with, even the tropes that Eddings is using, they're classic fantasy tropes, or traditional fantasy tropes, if you want to call them that, where it's things like hero's journey, quest, chosen one to some degree, hidden royalty you could probably slip in there. And so there's definitely a lot of things about this series that I I tend to love those classic fantasy tropes or those traditional fantasy tropes, and so it works really well for me. I really enjoy what he's doing, and I really enjoy the story that's being told here. He's definitely branching out and getting bigger, and like, you're learning a lot about the metaphysics of the world and of this series through and especially in this book 3, you get a lot of that. So very good. I very much enjoyed Magician's Gambit. Next one was the physical book that I finished, and again, I started this one, I believe, in March, but it may have been February that I started this, or even January. I don't remember for certain. And it's very short, so I should have had it finished long since, but it took forever to read. I take forever to read because I can't dedicate as much time to physically reading as I need to. But anyways, the book that I'm talking about is Proxima Station by Mike Molman. This is the first book in the Proxima Station series. I can't remember what the series is called. Book 2 is coming out this year, I believe. And so book 1 of the Proxima Station saga. I was correct. Book 2 is coming out this year. I wanted to get it read. Especially I wanted to get it read because Molman sent it to me, and I said I'll read it as soon as I can get to it. And because it was so short, I know that I could fit it in. It took me longer to fit it in than it should have, and it took me longer to read than it should have. But nonetheless, it's very enjoyable, very lighthearted, very fun. It really doesn't take itself very seriously. But that's not a problem for me because I know exactly what Molman's getting at with this story and what he's trying to do with it. The aliens are dogs, or based off of various dogs that Molman has had in his past, and so that's very fun just to experience these alien races that are based on these dogs that he's had and the personalities and stuff like that. And it's very fun, very enjoyable, very lighthearted, like I already mentioned. And yeah, just a good time. I enjoyed this one greatly. Then I finished The Lesser Devil by Christopher Rocchio. This is book 1.5 or novella 1.5 of the Sun Eater saga. This takes place in between books 1 and 2 of Sun Eater. Of course, I've read book 1 I read book 1, Empire of Silence, in March, and so I'm wanting to really continue through these books and make progress on them at a reasonable pace. And so I'm trying to get through at least one book a month if possible, or a main book every 2 months, and then one of the novellas or short story collections in the next month or something like that, so that I'm consistently progressing through this series at a reasonable pace and I don't have 6 months in between. Which means that I have to get the reviews written so that I can continue on to the next book without getting thoughts and things confused. Anyways, that's not important. Talking about Lesser Devil, this follows this Crispin Marlowe, so Hadrian's brother, and we're getting a little bit of the story, it's very much a character-focused story on the character of Crispin and how he develops and how he changes and what his life is like now after Hadrian has left. And there's a lot that goes on. There's a lot of time that has already passed from book 1 to this book, and there's a lot of developments that have happened in the space in between. And so this is kind of filling in some gaps, helping you to get to know Crispin a little bit. And I have a lot of thoughts about this book. I really enjoyed this book. Once my review for this book comes out, I would point you towards that because I'll break down my thoughts a lot clearer than I will if I'm just trying to talk them through right now off the top of my head, where I don't remember them every single thing, and I'm not trying to go in deep with this review. That being said, very much enjoyed this once again. I don't know that I liked it. I don't think I liked it more than Empire of Silence. I really like Hadrian's character. I really like what's going on there. It was very good to see Crispin and get to see some things from his perspective, because for in Empire of Silence, you're really seeing everything from the perspective of Hadrian, and even a Hadrian who's looking back on his own life. And so it's a very different perspective than when you're seeing through the eyes of Crispin and how he thinks and what he's seeing, what he's doing, the actions that he's taking, why he's doing them, stuff like that. So very enjoyable, not as enjoyable to me as Empire of Silence, but still very good. Then I listened to Tagarong. This is one of the books in the Redwall series. I've been trying to continuously go through Redwall so that I can actually get all of them reviewed, so that I can have marked off that the fact that I've read 19 or 20 of the books of the 22 that are out, and so I just really need to get all of them read so that I can say, yep, I've completed every book in the Redwall series. This is still one of my favorite series. And it really is. Tagarong has always been one of my favorite books. I love the fact that it follows an otter. I love the character of Tag, and just his story as it develops and what's going on here, and the way that Jakes decides to build this world in this story, and how he decides to kind of change the mold, the format, the stencil of the other books in the series, and how he adapts that to tell a slightly different story. And yeah, very good. I love this one. I've always loved this book. I'm not entirely sure that it's in my top 5 at the moment. I think it's probably still in my top 5. We will see if it stays there after I have completely reread everything, because I like The Long Patrol is the one that I read, I think, back in December, and that was my favorite book of the month. And it's one that I've read in the past but didn't really remember, but it jumped up into my favorite Redwell books. And so this one, I think it's still holding up there, but it might get knocked down just due to how much I love Madame Mayo, how much I love Long Patrol, and some of these other ones that I just really, really love. So anyways, that's my thoughts on Tag Rung. I will write a review of it when I get there. There's some really interesting philosophy or morality that Jakes is exploring within this book, and it's very small. Like it's not a huge portion of the story, but there's just some little moments that I'm like, wow, that's interesting that he's trying to explore those topics, those themes within this book. But the next book and final book that I listened to was a Ray Bradbury short story collection, and this was One More for the Road. This is one that I was listening to, and I was enjoying all the stories fairly well. I can't say that it's my favorite short story collection of his that I've read so far, but it was really good. I liked a lot of the things that was going on in this, a lot of the stories that he was telling, and I really appreciate reading Bradbury's short stories, because I learned so much about the craft of short stories and how you can tell a story and how you can kind of change the format of a story. It doesn't so much have to be that normal 3-act structure that we're used to, but you can twist some things and change some things around. There's a lot of information that isn't required because of what's going on. A lot of times you can just tell a story more on vibes rather than the story itself. It's just really interesting the way that short stories differ from novellas or novels or anything like that, and how that format changes the experience of telling a story. And so, yeah, I really appreciate reading Bradbury for the learning aspect of studying his short stories, but also just the stories that are told. I really like his writing style. I really like the atmosphere that he brings into everything. A lot of the stories are really fascinating. The way that he decides to look at things are really interesting. So had a great time with this. I was planning to wait longer to I was planning on taking a break from Bradbury and coming back to him at a later date. And for some reason, I just decided to pick this one up instead and had a great time with it. Not my favorite of the Bradburys. I think Dandelion Wine is still my favorite Bradbury story, and probably Illustrated Man is my favorite short story collection, but that I've read so far. But I have there's more that I need to read yet. And so yeah, I had a good time. I need to get my review of the previous one that I read. I need to get that one written, and I need to get this one written, because if I'm not careful, my thoughts will get confused on this. Yeah, I'm going to leave that there and we'll move on, which there's not really anything to move on to. So I am just going to wrap it up and say thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday and have our social medias linked in the description down below. We will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.